Hi, I'm Steve Greenblatt. I'm joined again by James King. And the last time we spoke, we talked a little bit about the idea we had about Ask the Programmer. So, first off, hi, James.
Hey Steve, how's it going?
It's great. I'm glad we made it back for a second recording. And I think that we got some good feedback based on our first one. And I think we could use that as our launch point to discuss where we're going to go from here. So, as we discussed previously, we were going to be reaching out to an audience, getting some questions, finding out some feedback, and seeing what are some topics that interest programmers and people who work with programmers. So, I'll kind of turn it over to you, and why don't you share what some of the things you came up with?
Sure. So like Steve said that after our first episode, we got some questions that came in, some topics. So we're really taking this chance to tease some of the future programs or episodes we'll have. And like for example, is one of the questions that came in was, how do you go about managing programmers? I mean, especially in higher ed or even as a programming house, how you manage them. Uh, so that I mean, we'll probably be leveraging Steve's expertise right there on that part. Some other questions that came in is, when you're looking for a programmer, what are you looking for? Like, what skills do we need as a programmer? And that goes along with another one of building the team of programmers. Because as I mentioned in the first episode, programmers have a unique mindset, I feel. So actually, how do you bring these unique mindset people together and build a team out of them? And then, as we talked about in the first one, is building that community of programmers, how we go about that, and what kind of options are there for them.
Those are just fantastic questions, and I'm sure we can go in a lot of different ways to answer those. And I look forward to seeing too some of the things that we agree upon and some of the things that maybe we have differing perspectives on, because I think that's going to be very telling. And the last time we spoke, it made me think about the fact that we're probably going to learn a lot more about each other and learn. And I think that the conversations that we have are going to be a primary example of why it's important for us to have this type of collaboration, because there are things that we both see differently and we both do differently, and there may be very good reasons for it as well.
100% agree. Every situation. I mean, we talk about this in the higher ed Slack group that was mentioned in the first episode. Is we all have the same problem. Some just have bigger, more zeros at the end. It's kind of same with programming. We all have the same problem. Some are just larger languages and some longer code than others. But we all are starting from the same place, and we can build off each other, help each other. And your situation is going to be different than mine, but we're going to build off of that.
Absolutely, which is, I think, a testament to why these types of conversations are important. And I think it's kind of that one and one makes three type of situation where we're going to put minds together that are going to have a greater sum than the parts. Um, Before we wrap up for our second episode and kind of tease where we're going, um, let's talk, I guess, a little bit about what you think makes a good programmer, and what are some of like the success skills that you've seen.
That's a good question. As I keep saying, programmers have a unique mindset. Um, so being able to see the large picture, but break it down in small chunks. Um, I think that be the having that ability is, I think, very key in programmer. Um, there's many projects where I'll be working on, especially if it's a new arena for me. Like when I went in and started to program our theater on campus. I'm like, okay, this is new to me. Never had a room that mixed live sound with install sound as well. So instead of jumping right in and looking at this huge picture and being like, okay, this is going to be 1,000 lines program, I'm like, well, I know I need to turn on a projector. So I did that first. Programmed that, had that working. I'm like, okay, now I need to have video source to that project. And I handled that. And I broke it into smaller chunks. So having that ability to say, yes, this is where we're going with the program, but be able to put it in smaller chunks is key. I think that's probably biggest key I would personally look for in a programmer.
It's a very interesting trait too, because a lot of people talk about how do you get to become a programmer, and I think that that's asked quite often. So it's important to understand that it's not just about learning a language, and it's not just about being able to sit down at a keyboard, because our world of AV and what AV programmers do is very different from what traditional software programmers do. And the that, to your point, you need to pull in information from all different perspectives, and take what can be very large and daunting, and turn that into something that's manageable, and figure out a way to get from point A to point Z.
Yeah. That's always a fun one. Try to figure out that path, and I think that's the joy of programming. And to kind of answer like the whole how do you even start to get into programming is program to me is never it's a lifestyle, kind of like a diet. You can't just jump on a diet, be like, okay, I'm going to do this for 2 weeks and I'm good, and then I'm going back to my normal lifestyle. You always got to be programming. You always got to be practicing and honing your skills and learning the craft, because there's things coming down the line every second in programming.
I, I'll kind of flip that a little bit too, because I agree with you there, and I think that it's important to always be learning and growing, and be even doing research, and be curious on your own, even when you don't necessarily need or have the impetus for using what you're learning. But I'll also say that it's important to have the complementary skills that go along with it. So you have to be able to have good time management. You also have to be able to have good organization. Make sure that you're writing neat code that is readable and understandable, and is structured so it can be modified and reused. There's a lot of underlying tips and tricks that over the years I've seen have led to more successful outcomes, and it isn't necessarily just tackling the need at hand, but more so growing as a person, and being able to uh, to expand your capabilities, so that you can, as you mentioned, take on bigger projects or do things that are more technically challenging. And I think the last one I'll say, which may be something that some people chuckle about, is you have to be able to communicate and talk to other people.
Yeah. I mean, those are great points. It goes back to what I mentioned episode one with being on an island. A lot of the codes I dealt with I was the only one looking at them. I'm the only one changing. So I'm learning those styles that you talk about, how to comment and make sure the code is actually real readable. Because I know I get frustrated when I'm looking at someone else's code and I can't read it. But then I go turn around and look at my code and I'm like, well, I kind of did the same thing. So I'm definitely always honing my skills and trying to fix that part, which is new to me. And that's definitely, you make a valid point right there, is having those other skills is key. And I'll admit I'm lacking on some of those.
Oh, it's always a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
I remember many years ago when I was first starting out my own, when somebody complimented me by saying, "Boy, you're really much more organized than other programmers," and I at the time I didn't understand what he was referring to because I only knew how to do things the way I knew how to do them. But now talking to other people and seeing other work out there, I find that sometimes disorganization or lack of discipline can stand in people's way. It may not bite you today, but in the long run, whether it's something that is inversioned or or a situation that uh, had not enough documentation, any of those types of things, when you're zooming out, they really can have a negative impact.
I, I totally agree. Now let's turn that and look at this as would you say one of the skills was being organized? Have you found with working with your employees and other programmers that they may be organized with their code, but their work area is not organized?
Usually they go hand in hand, but you make a very good point.
Yeah.
That usually you can tell if somebody is by looking at their work or area, you could probably tell what their code looks like. But then again, some people can be hyper focused, and that's why they say like very smart people don't wear the same thing every day because they don't want to have to use their brain power on thinking about what to wear and how to dress. So it it's a possibility. It's certainly a possibility.
And I thought I was just being lazy. I'll just say I'm the smart one now.
No, I think Steve Jobs was one of those a good example of that.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Well, I think these are the types of conversations that we are going to have more, and I'm sure that they're going to leave us thinking about follow-ups. And if you're like me, you're going to probably wake up in the middle of the night or tomorrow morning saying, I should have added that. So we're no stone's going to get left unturned. And we want this to be a continuing conversation. James, why don't you let the listeners know how to reach out to you again? Thank you for bringing these topics to us. And I also thank your audience and those who contributed to this episode.
No, that's great, Steve. Yeah, the community that reached out to us, that's great already. As we look to build this and build this bridge and work together and hopefully build the community that we keep talking about. So yeah, you can reach me at AV underscore James King on Twitter, James King on LinkedIn, and or swing by the higher ed area if you are into higher education, the higheredav.com.
Thanks. And likewise for me, please reach out, and you can reach me on Twitter and at Steve Greenblatt or LinkedIn as well. We're also trying to be active on AV in the AM, which is a Sunday morning Twitter chat, and another great way to share information and for to collaborate and hear what people are talking about and discuss some of the challenges that the industry is trying to tackle. Uh, but we do want to continue this conversation and make this about the listeners and make sure that we're serving those who are looking for help and not only um, needing the help of us, but also help of other people who are listening. So please contribute. Please let us know what you think and let us know how we can make this into something that will serve the audience. So that'll be it for this episode of Ask the Programmer. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.